So the good news is that whereas I used to try to record something into a cassette machine to show that I could read, now there are a million different ways. You can basically become a broadcaster in your own home. There are about a million different things that you've got to be trying to do. I got into the industry in the late 17th century when basically you just knocked on doors. I think I would love to have taken a university course which was vocational, but I think there were about 3 in the entire country. We are talking about 1970 something, and I couldn't get on any of them. I'm probably not the best person to advise on career paths because I'm obviously not familiar with 21st century career paths, but my perception would be that on the one hand, there have never been better opportunities for somebody who wants to make a career in sports reporting or sports broadcasting to put together a CV and a show reel of their own, to start their own blog, start their own website, to be proactive in terms of volunteering for work, maybe with a local football club in the lower leagues or some other sporting body. And any experience that you can get will count for more than your final mark in your degree, because CV and experience is everything now in the job market. So the good news is that whereas I used to try to record something into a cassette machine to show that I could read, now there are a million different ways. You can basically become a broadcaster in your own home. The bad news is there's lots more people who want to do it, and so the field has become very competitive. I occasionally get correspondence from people who are not involved in media further education, asking if they believe that they can have my job one day. I think that would be very difficult. I think now that potential employers are inevitably looking to courses like this one and the many others. You come out almost ready-made. You've had as much experience as you can possibly get without actually, and sometimes there is on-the-job experience to be had as part of the course, part of the coursework. So be proactive. Anything you can do to volunteer yourself, to gain experience, to find out whether it's what you really want to do or which particular part of it is what you want to do. But this is a vocation now. I mean, you don't come on a course like this because you didn't fancy doing mech eng or you're not very good at chemistry. You come on a course like this because you want to come out the other end and work in this industry. And so it's something you take home with you. It's something you've got to be doing 24 hours a day. You've got to be consuming media in a different way to your mates at the pub. You've got to be analytical, you've got to be investigative, and you've got to throw your heart as well as your head into it. So just be proactive. I think from a practical point of view, versatility is everything. Once upon a time, a film shoot for an interview for a program like whatever, Football Focus, would involve a cast of thousands. There would certainly be a couple of camera operators, a couple of producers, there would be sound operators, there would be makeup, there would be, you name it. Very often now it's one reporter going out and self-operating the camera and the audio, him or herself. So I think the versatility is important because once upon a time when I worked at Match of the Day, I edited football matches. I would commentate occasionally, and then maybe the next Saturday I would be in an edit suite watching an entire game come in and edit it down to the 6 minutes of highlights that you're going to see. So I gained an appreciation of what I wanted from the commentator, which I wouldn't have had as a commentator if I hadn't actually sort of got my hands dirty and done that side of the job. So the more aspects of the job you can familiarise yourself with, the more rounded a media provider you might become, and therefore when you specialise, hopefully the better understanding you would have of the tasks and the needs of the people around you, and so you'd be better to work with and better at what you do. The landscape of media is changing by the day. I have to move with those changes, but what does my experience give me? It gives me a certain stubbornness that some of the things that I was taught 20, 30 years ago are still relevant today, and I'm damn well going to cling on to them. I do worry about the instant nature of a lot of media platforms now, the need to be out there quickly before you've really checked or thought about the story that you've got. Are you able then to present it in a way in which it will be understood, in which it will carry the authority and credibility that it should do, because there's a huge responsibility that goes with publishing anything, even an abusive tweet. You know, that the responsibility we've seen attached to that, you know, is becoming more and more apparent. So as a professional provider of content, you have to take that responsibility seriously, and doing it quickly and doing it in 240 words is not necessarily going to be the best way of communicating it to the most number of people, which I still believe is essentially our jobs. So I'm a little bit concerned about the way in which media is being processed at the moment, and therefore in the way in which it's being consumed. And I hope that the next generation of media providers will find ways, and crikey, you know, the landscape is broad enough for the long read to still exist, for the investigative documentary to still exist. It doesn't all have to be, you know, 2 minutes long. It doesn't all have to be in your face. Some of it's got to have a little bit more depth and just a little bit more responsibility attached to getting it right and making sure people understand what it is you're trying to communicate to them. And I think there's a big responsibility on the next generation of communicators to reintroduce that. I think VAR is here to stay, and I think we better get used to it. I like it. I think that a lot of people that don't like it either A, don't understand it, or B, don't remember, it's only 12 months ago, what it was like beforehand. The responsibility for getting people to understand it better lies essentially with us, and I think it's a responsibility that we haven't seen out yet. I think there are too many people in high-profile broadcast positions who are rubbishing it without really understanding it. It's almost sort of in vogue to call VAR. You can't say the 3 letters VAR without screwing your face up. And you know, anybody who supports it, there's a guy called Dale Johnson online, an ESPN reporter, who understands it better than anybody and who is a great supporter of it. And he's just getting abuse for trying to explain it to people, which is a bit of a thankless task if people don't want to understand and get it better. As with all refereeing in all sports, when bad decisions are made, it reflects badly on the whole process. It reflects badly on the profession. And if they're made by a VAR, by a video assistant referee, then it reflects badly on the whole project and it is still in an experimental stage. I think it'll get better. I think it'll get faster. I think the technology will get better. I hope that we are brave enough to stay with it now. Some of the compromises that I hear being proposed just will not work for me. Offside, classically, offside is a very, very fine line. You can't broaden that line because the line's still going to have edges, and some of the incidents are going to happen on either side of the edge. VAR is prevalent in relatively few leagues in world football. You can't suddenly introduce the furthest point behind a player as the line rather than the furthest point forward with which they can play the ball, because I don't think I would have volunteered to line my son's under 10 games under those circumstances. It's almost impossible to line a game, you know, in the flesh, looking at the the rear part. I'm sorry, Arsene, you clearly haven't been a linesman. You know, I am. So I hope we stick with it, and I hope it gets better. The interruptions to the flow of the game are here. I mean, that's what's going to happen if you want it. If you don't want it, then fine. But you're going to get an awful lot of incorrect decisions. I think the experience for the fan in the ground needs to be better. But again, it costs money to put big screens in and you know, introduce the kind of technology that will take people along every step of the way. But first responsibility is on us as broadcasters is to explain it better than we're doing. Commentators are a matter of opinion. You know, Barry Davies once said to me, one man's commentator is another man's pain in the arse. And that same commentator can be one man's commentator one day and a pain in the arse the next day. I have my thoughts on what constitutes good television and good radio commentary. They are not correct, they're not right, they're not official, they're not gospel. It is a matter of opinion. I think one of the developments in the business is that because so much football is on TV now, I've done more off-tube commentaries probably in the last 5 years than I'd done in the previous 25 years. It is just obviously more economic to pull a lot of commentators together into one building and have a row of booths all with a different match going on, and to commentate on those games, you know, maybe 2,000 miles away from where they're actually taking place. What off-tube commentary, and I don't like off-tube commentary particularly, I don't like it as much as I do live commentary because it's a bit hairy. You're constantly hoping that the director isn't going to hang too long on the corner taker and get to the middle where somebody's scoring a goal, because that's the only view that you've got, same as the viewer at home. But what it does do, what it has done with me, is focus my mind on what the viewer sees. And I think it's made me a better commentator when I'm out here live at Wembley and I can see the whole pitch. Because I do think it is distracting for commentators to start referring to things that people aren't watching on the television set. If you're adding some information, if you're saying that so-and-so started to warm up, the substitute started to warm up, then that's fine. You're adding to the experience of the home viewer, you know, hasn't got the view that everybody else in the stadium here has. That is actually part of your job. But if you start some long stream of consciousness debate about VAR while there's a game still going on, because there was a VAR incident 3 minutes ago and you and the co-commentator have still got stuff to say to each other, I think that's a loss of focus. I think it's untidy. I think it's inconsiderate to the viewer. I think it's unnecessary. I think it's self-indulgent. One of the things that I really genuinely believe is that as commentators, we've got to realise our role. And in television, we're not as important as we are in radio. It's a visual medium. You can turn us down, and probably will turn us down if we just start to waffle and drivel on and give you every fact that we've researched. I think that editorial is a really, really strong word in any kind of communication. Anybody can do the hours and hours of prep that I do. Anybody who wants to do it can do that. Keep those records, keep them as neatly as I do, using that information editorially, journalistically, using it when it's important. That is what you learn. That is what you're here to learn. That is what you will learn if you start to work in broadcasting bit by bit, by watching it back. The most important thing we do, watching it back, being your own biggest critic, learning from your own mistakes, being your hardest reviewer. Then I think that sharp, succinct, editorial, journalistic focus is what, for me, makes a good commentator.